Sometimes the hardest part of a day off is the day off itself. You tell yourself this is your chance to finally relax. No alarms, no deadlines, no messages that need answering. But then something strange happens. You sit down to rest, and instead of feeling calm, you feel restless. Your mind starts racing. Maybe you should clean the house. Maybe you should answer that email. Maybe you should work on that project. Maybe you're wasting time. And before you know it, the one thing you desperately needed, rest, starts feeling uncomfortable. If you've ever felt guilty for relaxing, this video might explain why. Because the reason you can't relax on your days off has very little to do with laziness, and a lot to do with how your mind learned to survive. Imagine this. It's Saturday morning. You've been waiting all week for this day. You make coffee. You sit on the couch. You open your favorite show. For a moment, everything feels perfect. Then a small thought appears. Shouldn't I be doing something? You ignore it, but it grows louder. You've already wasted half the morning. There are people working harder than you. You could be using this time better. Suddenly you're not watching the show anymore. You're negotiating with your own mind. You try to rest. Your brain refuses. And maybe you've experienced something even stranger. You spend the entire week dreaming about having free time. Then when free time finally arrives, you don't know what to do with it. It's almost like your body is off work, but your mind never got the memo. Most people assume this happens because they're ambitious, or disciplined, or simply bad at relaxing. But that's not what's really going on. The truth begins much earlier, long before your job, long before your responsibilities, long before adulthood. Many of us grew up learning that our value came from what we did, not who we were. Maybe you received praise when you achieved something. Good grades, good behavior, being helpful, being productive, being useful. And slowly, without realizing it, your brain connected worth with performance. You learned an invisible equation. If I'm productive, I'm valuable. If I'm not productive, who am I? The scary part is that this belief doesn't disappear when you become an adult. It simply changes clothes. Now it's no longer about school. It's about work, money, success, goals, growth, achievement. And suddenly relaxing starts feeling dangerous. Not because rest is bad, but because rest temporarily disconnects you from the thing your identity has been built around. Doing. Pause for a second and think about that. How often do you feel proud of yourself simply for existing? Not because you accomplished something. Not because you finished a task. Not because someone approved of you. Just because you're you. For many people, that question is surprisingly difficult. And that's where the struggle begins. Because when productivity becomes your source of self-worth, rest starts feeling like a threat. But there's another layer to this. One that most people never notice. For some people, being busy isn't just a habit. It's an escape. A very effective one. Think about what happens when life gets quiet. No meetings, no tasks, no distractions, no endless scrolling. Just you and your thoughts. Suddenly emotions you've been outrunning start catching up. The sadness you never processed. The disappointment you never talked about. The loneliness you've been too busy to feel. The anxiety hiding beneath constant activity. Busyness acts like noise. And noise can be comforting. Because silence often reveals what's underneath. This is why some people can work for 12 hours straight, but feel uncomfortable sitting alone for 20 minutes. It's not that they're addicted to work. They're avoiding what work helps them avoid. And before you judge yourself for that, remember this. Your mind isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. At some point, staying busy became a coping mechanism. A way to stay safe. A way to stay distracted. A way to avoid pain. The problem is that coping mechanisms don't always know when they're no longer needed. They keep running long after the danger is gone. Like an alarm system that never learned how to switch off. And that's exactly what happens to many people on their days off. Their body is resting, but their nervous system is still standing guard. Still scanning for problems. Still waiting for the next demand. Still preparing for a threat that isn't there. This creates a strange experience. You finally get the freedom you've been craving. And somehow it feels uncomfortable, because peace feels unfamiliar. And humans often mistake familiarity for safety, even when familiarity is exhausting. Think about that for a moment. Sometimes we don't choose what feels good. We choose what feels familiar, even if it's stress, even if it's pressure, even if it's constant mental exhaustion, because at least we know how to function there. Rest, on the other hand, can feel like unfamiliar territory, and unfamiliar things make us nervous. Here's a real-life example. Imagine two people finishing the exact same workweek. The first person goes home and spends the weekend resting. They read, they walk, they sleep, they do absolutely nothing productive. And they enjoy it. The second person tries to do the same thing. But within an hour they're reorganizing their room, checking work messages, planning next week, starting side projects, creating new goals. Not because they want to, because they feel compelled to. The difference isn't motivation. It's conditioning. One person learned that rest is safe. The other learned that rest must be earned. And if you believe rest must be earned, you'll never feel like you've earned enough. There will always be one more task, one more responsibility, one more thing to fix, one more reason to postpone peace, until eventually your life becomes an endless waiting room, always preparing to live, never actually living. And this leads to a realization that can be difficult to hear. Maybe you're not struggling to relax because you're lazy. Maybe you're struggling because you've spent years convincing yourself that your worth depends on staying busy. Maybe the discomfort you feel isn't proof that you're doing something wrong. Maybe it's proof that you're doing something unfamiliar. Learning how to rest. Learning how to stop. Learning how to exist without constantly proving yourself. And that's not easy, especially in a world that constantly celebrates hustle. A world that praises burnout and calls it dedication. A world that makes people feel guilty for slowing down. But human beings were never designed to operate at maximum output every hour of every day. Even machines overheat. Yet somehow we expect ourselves to function endlessly without consequences. Then we wonder why we're exhausted, why we're anxious, why we're disconnected from ourselves. Maybe the goal isn't becoming more productive. Maybe the goal is becoming more present. Being able to enjoy a quiet afternoon without feeling guilty. Being able to sit still without needing to justify it. Being able to rest before you're completely broken. Because rest isn't a reward for finishing life. Rest is part of life. And perhaps that's the realization many of us need. You don't have to earn every moment of peace. You don't have to justify every minute of rest. You don't have to prove your worth through constant activity. Your value was never meant to depend on how busy you are. So the next time you find yourself on a day off, and that familiar guilt starts whispering in your ear, pause, listen carefully, and ask yourself one simple question. What if resting is not something I need to deserve? Because maybe the most productive thing you'll ever do is finally allowing yourself to stop for a little while and simply be.